G'day Bomber fans, it has been a few days since we last did a trade update and we have got a bit more to get through from the last few days. We've obviously got a trade on the way. Brayden Fiorini hasn't happened yet, but there is a bit more to talk about in how a trade could look. Zach Merrett is now looking more and more unlikely to get done by the day. We'll talk about that. There is another club's captain that we've got interest in, and we have a former Don on the radar for that vacant assistant coaching role left by Giant Syracuse. We've got another Essendon player to talk about as well, one that hasn't been in these trade update videos. So yeah, lots to get through. Let's get into it. All right, let's quickly start by looking at some targets that are off the table. These are players that the Bombers have had interest in that are going elsewhere. Flanders and Sarong, by the time this is out, Flanders may officially be at St Kilda. That's no surprise. They've been the most invested club in him in the last couple of years. Jai Sarong has requested a trade to Sydney. I would have liked the Dons to push a bit harder for him. In fact, of the two, I was probably more keen on Sarong as an option over Flanders. Both of them will be at other clubs. And Zane Dersma, so Matt Rosa himself came out and said that he expects Dersma to be at North Melbourne next year. I've said from the second we were linked, I just didn't see how a deal could get done. This is almost the hardest type of player to agree for a fee on. He's a highly touted draftee who is underperforming. North would rightfully ask for a top 10 pick for him, but the Dons can't really justify giving that up given the fact that Dersma has been out of form in the last 2 years. Now Dersma is out of contract next year. That would still require a trade to get done, but it gives more leverage if there is still interest then in Dersma leaving in 2026. But yeah, these three, they're not going to be with the Bombers next year. Now, just quickly on another Essendon player. So there's been some chatter about Jade Gresham online. Apparently, the rumours that the club have told him to explore his options and look elsewhere. This is yet to be confirmed by anyone of note, and it's the type of news that would be out by now if it was true, if it was lingering about. Gresham is under the same agency as Zach Merrett. Matt Bain is his manager. Both him and Tom Petroro are at TGI Sports. I'm making an assumption here, but I think if Gresham was told to look around, it would suit Merrett's narrative for that news to be public, just to paint the club in a bit more of an unstable light. And it's also the type of news that does just get out. This agency also has Sam Flanders and Jamie Elliott under it, so it's not like they go by their business under the radar or anything. I personally think right now, I doubt this news is true. There may well be something here. I might be wrong. I just need something more than online rumours to believe it. I think if this was the case, if Gresham was told to explore his options, it would be out by now. Before we chat a bit about Merrett, Brayden Fiorini, so I made a video about this yesterday. He's requested a trade to the Bombers. We will trade for him despite his free agency status to avoid compensation dilution. Yesterday, I said the likely outcome would be the Bombers acquiring a 3rd or 4th round pick as part of our hunt for NGA bid matching capital, and we'd give one of those 3rd or 4th rounders to the Suns. But Cal Toomey reported last night on Inside Trading that the Bombers would likely be sending through a future 3rd or 4th rounder to the Suns instead, which it makes a trade far less complicated. It means it will likely happen sooner, maybe in the next day or two, you could say. If this is the case, I would hope it's a future 4th, but a future 3rd is still quite cheap for someone joining on a 4-year contract. That would equate to, even if we finish dead last next year, it would probably still be in or around the 40 range of next year's draft, which is what range of pick I said we'd be trading for him this year. So yeah, pretty cheap, and trading a future pick does make it easier to get done sooner, so we can turn our attention elsewhere. Zach Merrett, it is the second day of trade period, and the Bombers are still firm in saying that they won't be trading him. That is the very strong messaging. It is very good messaging as well. Realistically, it's not true. Like, if Hawthorn offered up 300 first rounders and Jai Newcomb, the Bombers would agree to a deal. There's never a situation where you keep a player no matter what. There is always a deal that benefits the club more than keeping the player. Unfortunately now, though, we're at a stage where I think both clubs are kind of treading water here, twiddling their thumbs waiting for something to spark a move. Hawthorn are yet to contact Essendon. Essendon are yet to contact Hawthorn. There have been no trade negotiations as of yet, and Merrett is yet to officially request a trade himself. Now, obviously, if a trade was to reignite, it would take a trade request. That is the next step in this, but Merrett knows how delicate this situation is for him and his public image, because if he genuinely believed a trade would eventuate, he probably would have requested a trade by now. But with the club's messaging being so strong, maybe it's scared off Merrett going big, especially now that you've got news that Hawthorn are meeting with other players, Bailey Humphrey. Clearly, they're not all in on Merrett. Maybe it's because they've got a different priority. Maybe it's because they know a trade would be too difficult, planning for a plan B. So yeah, this is definitely kind of floating around while other deals, big deals, are gaining traction. And that's a good indication that as of right now, and I've said this the whole way through, as of right now, I think it is more unlikely than anything that a trade gets done. I think that Merrett will stay with the club. Now, that will change if Merrett does come out and request a trade, obviously there's, steps and layers for this, but even then you'd still need the clubs to agree on what is a fair deal, and we're not even at that stage of negotiations yet. So I think this is a good stance from the Bombers to be taking. It means that they either keep Merrett or they get the most from him. At the moment, it seems like nothing is going to happen until Merrett formally requests a trade. That would get things going, but that is yet to happen. So yeah, a bit of water treading going on here. A little tidbit, by the way. So it was reported that by Tom Morris a little under a month ago that Essendon was set to offer or already had offered Merrett a pay rise. That was debunked by Matt Rosa on Trade Radio this morning, which is good. I would have been pretty annoyed if that was to have been the case. But yeah, to sum this up, Merrett is he's kind of MIA. I'm sure at some stage this will ramp up again in some way, but as of right now, it is looking like he stays at the club. That is not what I personally want. That is what I think will happen. It seems far too difficult for both clubs to agree on what is a fair deal, even if other clubs are involved, which I think is the likely outcome if a trade was to eventuate. I think it would just be far too difficult. Jack Steele, I actually haven't spoken about this one yet on the channel, even though it happened over the weekend. So there is interest here from Essendon. Cal Toomey reported that the Saints were willing to listen to offers for Jack Steele, almost a bit of a look around. Steele did hand in his captaincy from the club. It was a tough year for him, but he does want to stay at St Kilda. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay at St Kilda, although he will listen to offers that come his way. So the Bombers are interested. They are trying to see what a deal could look like and whether they can get him in without damaging that draft hand too much. We are trying to get experienced players at the club to help aid the young group coming through. It is only early interest still, and when you've got a contracted player who would rather stay put at the club, and the Bombers, a club wanting that to keep that draft hand strong, I just think this one feels a bit too far away from getting a good outcome for. I'd suggest this Steele stays at St Kilda, but we'll see. If the Dons up the ante in the coming days, that could change things, but so far it is just that initial interest. Now, Matt Rosa has commented on Essendon's draft plans on Trade Radio. Nothing too special. This was kind of information that we suspected without having confirmed by someone at the club, but Essendon are looking at ways to move up the draft board in 2025. In fact, they've been in discussions with West Coast and Richmond, who sit above us in those early stages of the draft. Although nothing from those discussions has come yet. But Essendon will try and see if there's a world where they can obtain pick 1 from West Coast for Willem Dersma. That would be expensive. Some would say 4 and 5 would get the job done because the points value matches. I would think the Eagles would drive a harder bargain than that for what is essentially, in everyone's eyes, the best player in the draft by some distance, especially in the open draft. Now, Rosa did say they could look at moving into next year's draft, but the priority will be 2025. I'd expect Essendon to add another selection somewhere in that first round. Those picks in the 20s on screen will not stay in our draft hand. I think there is every chance they are bundled up to move up the order, even in the teens somewhere. Although, speaking of those picks in the 20s, so the reason that they will be moved is because of the NGA duo that we will be taking around that range if we take them. But Rosa is yet to pledge to them and guarantee that they will be taken by the club if a bid comes on them. I'd assume it is more likely than not that at least Adam Swade at the very least will have capital left for him if a bid was to come. And the good news is the draft hand that we have is good enough and flexible enough to move around. So I'd be thinking right now that by the end of the draft, Essendon would have moved both up the order in some capacity and down the order to cover for matched bids. I don't see us getting a trade for pick 1 done. I think we will hold on to 4 and 5, maybe add another in the teens if possible, and then have a handful left over in the 30 to 40 to 50 range for the bids that are to come. That is the way I see it unfolding, although it should be noted, pick swapping can happen pretty much now up until the draft, even on draft night. So if there isn't much movement here during the trade period, if a trade isn't done, a pick swap, it doesn't mean it's dead in the water. There is plenty of time for these moves to get done. Now, some coaching news. So recently, highly rated Essendon assistant coach Daniel John Siracusa left the Bombers to join Hawthorn as a development coach, adding to his CV as he continues to push for that head coaching role somewhere. Tom Morris labelled this a disaster, and we trust Tom with our lives. He is the man, Tom Morris. Now, Essendon are obviously on the hunt for a replacement, and on SEN Radio this morning, there was a bit of a rumour or information that Andrew Welsh and Dean Solomon were having a catch-up with former Essendon player and highly rated assistant himself, Mark McVeigh. Now, he is currently at Sydney after spending time at the Giants. He was actually their interim coach before Kingsley joined. I think it was Kingsley. He's highly rated like John Siracusa. He's got links to the club. We don't know how serious this catch-up was. Maybe it was just old mates and teammates having a beer, but the club is actively looking to replace John Siracusa, so it would be silly not to mention this. Of course, there will be talk about Hinkley being the possible replacement as assistant. I think it is more likely he joins the department in a lower rank to give him some more flexible living arrangements between Adelaide and Melbourne. That's if if he is to join the club. And I'm not saying this would happen, but it would be more than ideal for the Dons to welcome both McVeigh and Hinckley to the club. If we were to get a highly rated assistant and hopefully the boost of Hinckley in a developmental role, that would be great. It's a long shot, obviously, but we can dream. But yeah, that is all. That is another trade update. Not the last. There's going to be plenty more to come. I'm sure we will have a confirmed trade to talk about soon, whether it be Fiorini or pick swaps. I would assume both happen at some stage. That is all. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Like, subscribe, and go Bombers.